Room 237 was supposed to be empty that Tuesday night. The patient had been discharged that morning. I processed the paperwork myself. So why were there voices coming from inside at 2:30 a.m.? As Metropolitan General's senior black nurse on the night shift, I'd learned to trust my instincts. Following those voices led me into the darkest conspiracy in medical history. They thought the night shift nurse wouldn't notice. They thought wrong. My name is Patricia Williams, and I've been working the night shift at Metropolitan General Hospital for 12 years. At 45, I'm what you might call a fixture around here. The reliable black nurse who knows every corner of this place, every sound it makes when the world sleeps. Most people see the night shift as punishment duty, but I chose it. Fewer administrators breathing down your neck, more autonomy, and honestly, better relationships with patients who can't sleep and need someone to talk to. Metropolitan General is a prestigious hospital in downtown Chicago, the kind of place where wealthy patients fly in from across the country for specialized procedures. Our transplant program is particularly renowned. We have one of the highest success rates in the nation. As a black nurse who's worked her way up from the bottom, I take pride in being part of something that saves lives every day. But something had been bothering me for weeks. It started with Mrs. Chen in room 237. She'd come in for a routine gallbladder surgery, in and out, simple procedure. I'd done her pre-op paperwork on Monday night, and everything looked normal. Healthy 52-year-old woman, no complications expected. Tuesday morning, I was finishing my shift when Dr. Marcus Henderson, our chief of surgery, approached me with discharge papers. "Mrs. Chen is ready to go home," he said, barely making eye contact. "Family picked her up an hour ago." I was surprised. Already? I thought she was scheduled for observation until Wednesday. Plans changed. She recovered faster than expected. His tone suggested the conversation was over. I processed the discharge paperwork, noting that Mrs. Chen had indeed been released at 7:15 a.m. Her insurance information, next of kin details, everything was in order. I went home, slept through the day as always, and returned for my Tuesday night shift at 11 p.m. The hospital at night is a different world. Dimmed lights cast long shadows down corridors that buzz with activity during the day, but now whisper with the sounds of sleeping patients and quiet conversations between night staff. I've always found it peaceful, almost sacred. This is when real healing happens, when the body repairs itself in the darkness. My rounds that night took me past room 237 around 2:30 a.m. I was checking on Mr. Rodriguez in 236, post-operative hip replacement, needed pain medication adjusted, when I heard something that made me freeze. Voices. Coming from room 237. Low, hushed conversation. 2 people, maybe 3. I checked my patient roster again. Room 237 was listed as vacant, cleaned, and ready for the next admission. As the senior black nurse on duty, I'd learned over the years that questioning things too loudly could be problematic. But I'd also learned to trust my instincts. 12 years of night shifts teaches you to notice when something's off. I approached room 237 quietly. The door was closed, which was unusual for vacant rooms. We typically left them open for housekeeping and maintenance. Light was seeping from under the door. "Have to move faster next time," a voice was saying. Male, authoritative. It sounded like Dr. Henderson. "The window is narrow," another voice replied. "If we push too hard, people start asking questions." I pressed closer to the door, my heart beginning to race. "The black nurse on night shift," the first voice continued. "Patricia something. She's been around too long, asks too many questions." My blood went cold. They were talking about me. I slipped away from room 237 without being detected, my mind racing. Why were doctors having secret meetings in supposedly vacant patient rooms at 2:30 a.m.? And why was my name coming up in their conversation? For the rest of that shift, I couldn't focus. Every shadow seemed longer, every sound more ominous. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Stress, fatigue, the isolation of working nights. It could all play tricks on your mind. But Thursday brought another incident. Mrs. Jackson, 48 years old, had been admitted for kidney stones. Routine procedure scheduled for Friday morning. I'd gotten to know her over 2 nights. She was a teacher from the South Side, worried about missing too much work. We'd talked about her students, her daughter starting college next year. Thursday morning, Dr. Henderson again approached me with discharge papers. "Mrs. Jackson?" I asked, confused. "But her procedure isn't until tomorrow. Kidney stones passed naturally during the night. Lucky break for her." I looked at the paperwork. Discharged at 6:45 a.m. But something nagged at me. I'd checked on Mrs. Jackson at 6 a.m. and she'd been sleeping peacefully in her bed. How had she been discharged 45 minutes later without me noticing? "Did she leave through the main exit?" I asked. Dr. Henderson's jaw tightened slightly. "Is there a problem, Nurse Williams?" The way he said my name, with just enough emphasis to remind me of my place, sent a chill down my spine. As a black nurse, I'd faced this subtle intimidation before, the implication that I was overstepping, being too inquisitive, not staying in my lane. "No problem, doctor, just making sure our records are accurate." But privately, I made a decision. I was going to start paying closer attention. Over the next week, I began keeping unofficial notes. Not in the hospital system, something told me that wouldn't be wise, but in a small notebook I kept in my scrubs pocket. I documented discharge times, which doctors were involved, any unusual activity I observed. The pattern became clear quickly. Every Tuesday and Thursday there were unexpected discharges, always processed by Dr. Henderson, always patients who'd seemed perfectly healthy and comfortable when I'd last checked on them. And every Tuesday and Thursday, between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., the security cameras on our floor went offline for routine maintenance. 3 weeks after the first incident, I decided to act. Tuesday night, October 15th, I prepared myself for whatever I might find. I'd arranged for Sandra, another nurse, to cover my rounds while I investigated. At 2:25 a.m., I positioned myself near the supply closet across from room 237, which was again listed as vacant. At exactly 2:30, the corridor security cameras clicked off. The tiny red lights that had been blinking steadily went dark. 5 minutes later, Dr. Henderson appeared, along with Dr. Sarah Kim from anesthesiology and someone I didn't recognize, a man in scrubs but no hospital ID badge. They wheeled in what looked like a standard medical transport cart, the kind we use to move patients between floors. But as they passed under the emergency lighting, I saw something that made my stomach turn. There was someone on that cart. Unconscious, covered with a standard hospital sheet, but definitely a person. They entered room 237 and closed the door. My hands were shaking as I checked the patient roster again. Room 237, vacant, no scheduled procedures, no authorized personnel. I waited in the supply closet for 45 minutes. When they emerged, the cart carried a different load. Several small coolers, the kind used for organ transport. The unknown man wheeled the cart toward the service elevator, while Dr. Henderson and Dr. Kim went in opposite directions. I waited another 10 minutes before approaching room 237. The door was unlocked. The room appeared normal at first glance. Standard hospital room, bed made with fresh linens, medical equipment in its proper place. But there were subtle signs that something had happened here. The faint smell of disinfectant was stronger than usual. The medical waste bin had been recently emptied, but not replaced with a new liner. And on the floor near the bed, a small drop of blood that hadn't been cleaned up. But it was what I found in the bathroom that confirmed my worst fears. Behind the toilet, partially hidden, was a hospital bracelet. The kind we put on every patient upon admission. I picked it up with a tissue and read the name, Chen, Margaret. Patient ID number, admission date. Everything matched Mrs. Chen from 3 weeks ago, the patient who had supposedly been discharged that Tuesday morning. Mrs. Chen had never left the hospital alive. The next morning, I went home in a daze. Everything I thought I knew about Metropolitan General, about the people I worked with, had been shattered. I was a black nurse who'd built her career on caring for patients, on being part of a system that healed people. Now I was uncovering evidence that this same system was murdering them. I spent the day researching. Mrs. Chen's name appeared in the local obituary section dated a week after her supposed discharge. Died suddenly at home from complications following routine surgery. Her family had donated her organs, liver, kidneys, corneas. All had gone to patients at Metropolitan General. Mrs. Jackson's obituary was similar. Unexpected complications from kidney stones led to organ failure. Her organs had also been donated to Metropolitan General patients. The pattern was becoming horrifyingly clear. Healthy patients were being selected, murdered, and their organs harvested to supply the hospital's renowned transplant program. The 95% success rate that we were so proud of wasn't due to medical excellence. It was because we had a guaranteed supply of fresh, healthy organs from victims. But I needed more evidence. As a black nurse making accusations against prominent white doctors, I knew my word alone wouldn't be enough. I needed proof that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. I started documenting everything: security camera schedules, staff rotations, patient records. I cross-referenced obituaries with our transplant records. The number of coincidences was staggering. Most importantly, I needed to identify the mysterious third man I'd seen that Tuesday night. He was clearly crucial to the operation, probably the one actually performing the murders while the doctors provided cover. That's when I remembered the security footage. While the cameras on our floor went offline during the operations, the cameras in the parking garage and main entrances ran continuously. If I could access those recordings, I might be able to identify the mystery man. Getting access to security footage as a night shift nurse wasn't easy, but I had an advantage. I knew the hospital inside and out. More importantly, I knew the people. Jerome Washington, our night security guard, was someone I'd worked with for years. As one of the few other black employees who'd been around long enough to see how things really worked, he'd always been someone I could trust. "Jerome," I approached him during his rounds Thursday night, "I need a favor, and it might get us both in trouble." He looked at me seriously. Jerome was in his 50s, a former Chicago police officer who'd taken the security job after a back injury ended his law enforcement career. "What kind of trouble, Patricia?" I told him everything. The voices in room 237, the fake discharges, the organ connection. His expression grew darker with each detail. "You sure about this?" he asked when I finished. "I found Mrs. Chen's hospital bracelet in that room. Jerome. She never left here alive." He was quiet for a long moment. "My nephew was on the transplant waiting list last year, got a kidney from here, saved his life." He looked at me with pain in his eyes. "You telling me someone died for that kidney?" "I'm telling you someone was murdered for it." Jerome helped me access the security office during his 3 a.m. rounds. The footage from the parking garage showed the mystery man arriving every Tuesday and Thursday at exactly 1:45 a.m., driving a white van with medical transport plates. He left around 4:30 a.m., and the van was noticeably lower in the back, consistent with carrying the weight of medical coolers. But it was the front entrance footage that gave me the breakthrough I needed. As the man entered the hospital, he passed directly under a high-resolution camera. The image was clear enough to run facial recognition. Jerome had connections from his police days. "Give me 48 hours," he said. "I'll find out who this guy is." The identity of the mystery man shattered what remained of my faith in the system. His name was Marcus Torres, a former medical examiner who'd been stripped of his license 3 years earlier for falsifying autopsy reports. Now he was working as a freelance organ procurement specialist for medical facilities willing to pay premium prices for guaranteed fresh organs. But the real revelation came when Jerome showed me Torres's financial records, obtained through his police contacts. The payments weren't coming from Metropolitan General Hospital directly. They were coming from Pinnacle Medical Group, a private company owned by Dr. Henderson and 3 other doctors. Pinnacle Medical was billing insurance companies and wealthy patients premium rates for exclusive transplant services while murdering innocent people to supply the organs. They were literally running a murder-for-profit operation disguised as medical excellence. The scope was staggering. Over the past 2 years, they'd murdered at least 30 patients. All had been selected based on specific criteria: good health, rare blood types, tissue compatibility with wealthy patients on private waiting lists. They were killed during the security camera downtime, their organs harvested by Torres, and their bodies disposed of through the hospital's medical waste system. The fake discharge paperwork provided cover, making it appear that patients had left the hospital alive. When they died at home, days later, their families were approached about organ donation, never knowing their loved ones had actually been murdered for those very organs. As a black nurse, I understood I was in a precarious position. These weren't just any doctors. Dr. Henderson was the chief of surgery, with connections throughout the medical community and city government. Dr. Kim's husband was a prominent attorney. Torres had mob connections from his days as a corrupt medical examiner. But I also knew that if I didn't act, more people would die. The next Tuesday was only 3 days away. I couldn't go to hospital administration. Dr. Henderson essentially was hospital administration when it came to surgical matters. I couldn't go to the police directly. My accusations would sound insane without concrete proof, and Torres' connections could make evidence disappear. I needed to catch them in the act with undeniable evidence. Jerome and I developed a plan. The next Tuesday night, we would be ready. Jerome would position himself to monitor the security office, ensuring the cameras stayed online. I would be in room 237 with a hidden recording device, documenting everything that happened. It was dangerous. If they discovered me, I had no doubt they'd add me to their victim list. But as a black nurse who'd spent her career fighting for patients who couldn't fight for themselves, I couldn't walk away. Tuesday arrived with unusual activity. Dr. Henderson seemed nervous during the evening shift change, checking his phone repeatedly. Dr. Kim was working a shift she wasn't normally scheduled for. The signs pointed to another murder planned for that night. At 11 p.m., I checked the patient roster. Room 238 had a new admission. David Martinez, 34 years old, admitted for observation following a minor car accident. Perfect health, AB negative blood type. Extremely rare and valuable for organ transplant. I introduced myself to Mr. Martinez during my rounds. He was alert, friendly, looking forward to going home in the morning. His wife was 8 months pregnant with their first child. He showed me ultrasound pictures of his daughter, due next month. By midnight, I knew David Martinez was marked for death. At 2:15 a.m., I hid inside room 237 with a digital recorder Jerome had provided from his police contacts. The cameras would go offline in 15 minutes, and I'd learned their pattern well enough to know exactly what would happen next. At 2:25, Jerome texted me. "They're moving Martinez now. He's unconscious. They drugged him during the midnight med round." My hands were shaking as I heard footsteps in the corridor. The door to room 237 opened, and they wheeled in the transport cart carrying David Martinez. He was alive but deeply sedated, unaware that he was about to be murdered for his organs. Dr. Henderson entered first, followed by Dr. Kim and Torres. They were wearing surgical scrubs but no identification, discussing the procedure in clinical terms that made my blood run cold. "A B-negative organs are worth triple the usual rate," Henderson was saying. "The liver alone will net us $200,000. "Patient has no significant medical history," Dr. Kim added, checking a tablet. "Perfect candidate. Family will never suspect anything." Torres was setting up equipment, not life-saving medical devices, but organ preservation systems. "We'll make it look like cardiac arrest. Family gets to say goodbye to a body that shows no obvious trauma. Clean, simple, profitable." I was recording everything, my heart pounding so loud I was afraid they might hear it. This was it, undeniable proof of premeditated murder. Then Torres looked directly at the supply cabinet where I was hiding. "Did you check the room?" he asked Henderson. "Of course I checked it. Check it again. Something feels off." I held my breath as Henderson walked toward my hiding spot. 3 feet away, 2 feet, 1 foot. The supply cabinet door began to open. The fire alarm suddenly blazed through the hospital, emergency lights flashing, evacuation announcements echoing down the corridors. Jerome had triggered the alarm from the security office, creating chaos that gave me the distraction I needed. In the confusion, I slipped out of the supply cabinet and into the chaos of the corridor. Nurses were evacuating patients, security guards were checking rooms, and the organ harvesting team was forced to abandon their operation. I made it to the stairwell before I heard Henderson shouting behind me, "Find her! Find the black nurse! She was recording us!" I ran down 8 flights of stairs, clutching the digital recorder that contained evidence of their murder conspiracy. But as I reached the ground floor, I realized my danger was just beginning. Torres was waiting by the exit, blocking my escape route. "Nurse Williams," he said calmly, as if we were having a normal conversation. "I think you have something that belongs to us." "I don't know what you're talking about." He smiled, a cold, predatory expression that confirmed every fear I'd had about this man. "I've killed 37 people in the last 2 years, Patricia. Most of them were unconscious and never saw it coming. But you, I'm going to enjoy." He reached into his jacket, and I saw the flash of a syringe filled with clear liquid, the same method they'd used to murder David Martinez and all the others. But Torres had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated the black nurse who'd spent 12 years working night shifts, who knew every corner of this hospital, who'd survived in a system designed to minimize her voice and her value. I knew something he didn't. Jerome wasn't just triggering fire alarms, he was also calling in backup. The FBI burst through the hospital entrances at exactly the moment Torres was reaching for me with the fatal injection. Jerome's police contacts had connected us with Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to our murdered patient, who specialized in medical fraud and organized crime. The recording I'd made was just the beginning. With the FBI's resources, they unraveled the entire conspiracy within hours. Bank records, medical records, victim identification, Torres's criminal network. Everything came together in a devastating case against the organ harvesting ring. Dr. Henderson was arrested in the hospital parking lot, trying to flee with a suitcase full of cash and false identification documents. Dr. Kim was found at her home, attempting to destroy financial records that linked her to 14 murders over 2 years. Torres tried to run but was captured at the airport. The syringe he'd intended to use on me contained enough potassium chloride to kill 5 people. The same method used to murder all their victims. David Martinez survived, though he remained unconscious for 3 days while the drugs cleared his system. When he woke up, I was there to tell him how close he'd come to becoming victim number 38. His daughter was born healthy 6 weeks later, and they named her Patricia. The investigation revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. 37 murders over 2 years, generating over $12 million in illegal organ sales. Wealthy patients had unknowingly received organs from murder victims, while insurance companies had been billed for premium transplant services that were actually evidence of systematic killing. Metropolitan General Hospital faced federal charges for negligent oversight, though most staff members were cleared of wrongdoing. The night shift security protocols were completely overhauled, and an independent oversight board was established to monitor all transplant activities. 6 months later, I was awarded the Nursing Excellence Award by the American Nurses Association, the first time a night shift nurse had ever received the honor. The citation read, "For extraordinary courage in protecting patients and upholding the highest standards of medical ethics." I still work nights at Metropolitan General, but things are different now. The hospital administration consults with night shift nurses on policy decisions. Security protocols have been strengthened, and there's a new awareness that the people working while others sleep often see things that daylight misses. During the trial, Dr. Henderson's defense attorney tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee with a grudge against authority. Ms. Williams is just a night shift nurse, he argued, trying to destroy the careers of distinguished doctors based on paranoid fantasies. The prosecutor's response became legendary in nursing circles. Ms. Williams is exactly what every patient hopes for, a nurse who pays attention, asks questions, and refuses to be intimidated when lives are at stake. If more medical professionals had her courage, 37 people would still be alive today. All 3 conspirators received life sentences without possibility of parole. Torres was also charged with multiple counts. Today, I train other nurses, particularly young black women entering the profession, about the importance of trusting their instincts and speaking up when something seems wrong. I tell them about Mrs. Chen, Mrs. Jackson, and David Martinez. I explain how a system can become corrupt when good people stay silent, and how one person with courage can expose even the most sophisticated criminal conspiracy. Room 237 is now used for storage. It's never housed another patient, but sometimes, during my late-night rounds, I stop by and remember the voices I heard that changed everything. The conversation that revealed how evil can hide behind medical credentials, how profit can corrupt the healing mission, and how a black nurse working the night shift became the only thing standing between organized murderers and their next victim. They thought I was just part of the background, another overlooked employee in scrubs. They thought wrong, and I made sure they paid the price for that mistake. In medicine, we have a saying, first, do no harm. But sometimes, preventing harm means taking risks, asking difficult questions, and refusing to accept easy explanations when lives hang in the balance. Sometimes it means being the black nurse who works nights and notices everything.